just gonna play this for a little bit. Just play this for a bit. Just hear it.
You're not the only one who feels like this, feeling like you lose more than you win, like life is just an endless hill you climb. You try and try, but never arrive. I'm telling you something, this racing, this running, oh, you're working way too hard. And this perfection you're chasing's just energy wasted, 'cause he loves you like you are. So go ahead and live like you love. It's okay to act like you've been set free. His love has made you more than enough. So go ahead and be who he made you to be, and live like you love. Live like you love. Live like you love. Live like you love. And live like you know you're valuable, like you know the one that holds your soul. 'Cause mercy has called you by your name. Don't be afraid to live in that grace. I'm telling you something, this God we believe in, yeah, he changed everything.
Yeah, he changed everything.
No more guilt, no more shame.
He took all that away, gave us a reason to sing.
So go ahead and
Live like you love. It's okay to act like you've been set free. His love has made you more than enough. So go ahead and be who he made you to be,
and live like you love. Live like you love. Live like you love. Live like you love.
Live like you love. Walk like you're free. Stand like you know who he made you to be. Live like you love, like you believe. His love is all
that you'll
ever need.
So go ahead and live like you love. His love has made you more than enough. So go ahead and live like you love.
It's okay to act like you've been set free. His love has made you more than enough. Go ahead and be who he made you to be. Live like you love. 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 Live like you love.
Like you love, walk like you're free, stand like you know who he made you to be. Live like you love, like you believe. His love is all that you'll ever need. Live like you love.
Before he spoke creation, the God of heaven knew our name. Formed in his reflection, we are his glory on display. And his heart is good, he is always kind. With the cross he proved he is on our side. His love He lavished on us and called us children of the King. And in His loving kindness, He chose the lowly and the weak. And His heart is good, He is always kind. With the cross He proved He is on my so unexplainable. I can hardly think as you call me, deeper still as you call me, deeper still as you call me, deeper still into love. Love, you're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us.
I wasn't on.
You weren't on?
I was just talking loudly. It's all my fault. All I had to do is press the stinking button. Can you not hear me? All right. Are we good?
I think so, yeah.
Take two. All right. So, as you all know, wish you a happy Mother's Day. And we're in this series in between. That's funny. They really couldn't hear me. So, you want to put just me on right now. So, then I'll introduce Carol later. Perfect. All right. We are trying to do so much in the set today, and we're going to have fun doing it. Thank you for your comments. This is great. We can see you scrolling in. Jan Carlos, good morning. Good to see you. Erica, Meredith, Mark, all you guys. Amen, right? Denise, thank you so much for your feedback. We're going to be having some fun. We got a lot to do. First of all, let me just say we're going to do a Mother's Day tribute, but happy Mother's Day to all you beautiful moms out there. When I woke up this morning, Diane showed me a card from our daughter Jenna, and it called her the Gamote. I don't know how to say it, but the GOAT with an M, the greatest mother of all time. And Diane didn't know what that meant, so I had to help her figure that out. But let me just talk a little bit about the series that we're in, and then we're going to do a special Mother's Day tribute. And so we've been in this series called In Between, and we've talked about loneliness. We've talked about marriage and relationships. We've talked about the land in between itself, right? Like just navigating this time of being in the pandemic. It's just rough. You know, some of you find yourselves in between having a job and waiting for unemployment checks to come in. Some of you find yourselves in between having to work long hours and still having to homeschool your children. Some of you are in between, like really wanting to strangle those kids and maybe even your spouse and waiting for things to hopefully get back to normal, whatever that means. And some of you are on the front lines and you're in between exhaustion and will this thing ever end? You're in between making a difference in people's lives and wondering if I'll be bringing this virus back to my loved ones. There's Will. Is that you? Oh, okay. See, that's so awesome. Yes, squirrel. And so we are going to be making this very interactive. Really love it when you guys write in. Love seeing the comments. Brian, thank you. See you there. Jojo, good morning. Just love having you all with us. And this is great. So just as we're going, we're going to be asking for questions and comments and the different things. So please, write in. We'd love to hear from you. And so what I'd like to do is just take a moment to talk about Mother's Day. And we have a beautiful tribute. But before we get to that, I just want to speak, first, Mom, happy Mom's Day to you. I love you. And this is where a lot of my thoughts come from, is just thinking about my mom. And, my mom, when I was growing up, she was a single mom, and she worked 3 jobs to help me and my sister. And every time I talk about that, I get emotional because now as an adult, I can really see the sacrifice. I can see what does it take to work 3 jobs and still provide us this beautiful home, right? This beautiful household, and the love and the support and the teaching, the encouragement, the discipline, all of it. I look back and sometimes as children, my mom's a good disciplinarian, so it's like you look and I don't like it when she does that, right? But now as an adult, you see the value of it, and you see all the life lessons, and even to this day, Mom, you know how special you are in our lives, and just grateful to you. And my story's not unique in that way. A lot of you just have, this day means a lot to you, and you get to celebrate this with your moms. And I also recognize, too, that for some of us, it's challenging. Right? We didn't have the greatest upbringing, and that can be difficult. And I guess I would just say, this is a day to maybe just really think about motherhood. And, then I have my wife here, and, just thinking about her as a mom. And it's great when you can see the generations, right? And you pass on these things. So I look at what my mom, and then I look at Diane as a mom, and then I look at Jenna one day. Maybe she'll be a mom, and you keep passing these on. And we're gonna be talking about that. What does it look like to pass these on from generation to generation to generation? And so I just really, if you're a mom this day, I so appreciate you. I just hope that you feel my warmth and my love and my encouragement, my thankfulness to you, and I wish you from the bottom of my heart a happy Mother's Day. And so we are going to want to just say thank you to Steve Caddick, who put together a song called My Mother's Eyes, and we combined that with we did a thing yesterday at Four Echoes, which is the vintage shop that the church owns in Seekonk, and it was just this wonderful opportunity to do 2 things. One was in the community, we had 75 what we called bags of love. And we wanted to bless single moms that were in the community as well as moms who are on the front lines. And I got to tell you, just by watching the folks, some of you, of course, I know who you are, and I was blessed to see you and just to kind of see a smile on your face. And just to offer you this bag of love, a small gesture of thanks to you, and to wish you a happy Mother's Day for today. But then there was a lot of folks that I didn't know, and one of the things that I did, it stood out to me as wow, it just was very vivid. Even though the moms I don't know, I could tell that they were on the front lines, and there was a sense of exhaustion and despondency, and it was just I felt like maybe this was just like a little bit of a relief. You know what I mean? Like just that little big bag of hope and love. And so I just really wanted to thank you. And I hope that this Mother's Day song warms your heart. And then we also had moms from our church, Stone Coast Community Church. And we had a few families come in and take pictures and like 40-mile-an-hour winds. You know, it was pretty awesome. A little bit cold. But we just captured this. And Brian just did a phenomenal job of just capturing Steve's song and a couple of these photos. And so we just want to watch this video, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about it.
One bright and guiding light that taught me wrong from right, I found in my mother's eyes. Those baby tales she told that road all paved in gold, I found in my mother's eyes. Just like a winged sparrow, one lonely soul, I walk the straight and narrow to reach my goal. God's gift sent from above, a real unselfish love, I found in my mother's eyes. Just like a wandering sparrow, one lonely soul, I walk the straight and narrow to reach my goal. God's gift sent from above, a real unselfish love, I found in my mother's eyes. I found in my mother's eyes.
So thank you so much, Steve. You know, and I see in the comments, like Paula was saying, we love Steve Caddick. So shout out to Steve. Thank you so much for doing that and just blessing us with that beautiful song. And so thank you. And I wanted to thank Brian Arnold too. Brian just did a phenomenal job. He was out here yesterday taking pictures in the cold and putting together video. And then he did this last night and put this all together for us. So just a big shout out. And I wanted to thank, you know, we put together these 75 bags of love, and we can't do that by ourselves, you know. So we had some great sponsors. We had Propane Plus, we had Shein Printing, a good friend of mine, Deb, helped out, Coastal Kitchen, Chick-fil-A, Popular Pizza, Cousins, and it was just like it was just an amazing time. And I wanted to thank Jessica Hershey. She's on our staff. She did a phenomenal job of taking the lead on this and putting this all together. And then Kara, who's going to be joining me today, and my wife Diane, and also Diane Johnson. We were just all together, just put this beautiful day on. And it was pretty funny. Like, as a side note, like Diane, my wife Diane, we had 150 bags that we wanted to give out. We put in 4 cookies in each, so she made 600 cookies. So our house was like a bakery for 2 days. So that was pretty fun. And I didn't eat any until yesterday. I had my first sampler, and quite amazing. So just wanted to thank you all for making this happen. It's just phenomenal, right? Like, it just blows me away to see when the community and the church, we all come together, right? And we just want to make a difference. And I could go on and on about like the moms, like we did the nominees, right? And people were writing in about their fellow coworkers or loved ones or friends. And it was just so beautiful. Like, Jessica was telling us that it was absolutely heartwarming. She said she was a hot mess as she was reading these. And so, like, what we did was we asked, like, who are you nominating and why? And so people would write in a little blurb. And then what we did is we emailed the person who got nominated and put the blurb with it. And we just heard so much great feedback about how meaningful that was. And it was so cool watching people in the parking lot, obviously through their cars with social distancing and stuff like that. But it was just a beautiful, beautiful day, and so I hope this just carries over today. And again, happy Mother's Day. All right, so we're going to jump into today's teaching. So we're talking about in between, right? So we're going to be talking about parenting in between. Pretty appropriate, right? It's kind of like we had this planned out. Not really, but it works out that way, right? Kara helps me with that. So then one thing I keep saying over and over again is that we're all in the same ocean, but we're in different boats, And that was from an excerpt that Jessica had given to us. And I just want to keep saying that every week because it's so true. Like, the more people I talk to during the week, it's absolutely amazing to see how diverse and like polarizing it is, like to see people experiencing these things so differently. And it's humbling, and it's enigmatic, if that's a word. It's puzzling. And at the same time, I want us to realize that you're not alone, that we're all in this together because we are all on the same ocean. And somehow we're going to navigate this together, even though we're in different boats. And I was feeling like, man, in parenting, it can't be more evident in parenting than this, right? So I just want you to know right at the front end, like, my situation is probably different than yours and vice versa. So just have grace. And I'm going to bring Kara up in a minute, and same thing with her situation. Everyone's situation is a little bit unique. And so just, I ask you to lean in, take the things that make sense to you, the things that you can glean from. And if it doesn't apply to you, just let it go, So for me, though, I'm excited about doing this talk because, like, I'm a really big family guy. Like, I absolutely adore and love my family. I have an amazing wife of 25 years, Diane, and we have 3 beautiful kids, now young adults, Jenna, Terry, and Will. And it's just something that, like, when I think about family, it's almost like anytime I watch a show on it, someone does a teaching on it, I get very emotional because there's something like, first of all, I always feel like I'm inadequate. Like, I can always get better at it. You know what I mean? And it's like, and I think even in a time like this, many of us are probably feeling inadequate. And, I feel it's important that you hear this. It's like, just do the best that you can in this period of time, right? And you will get through this. But we have to kind of give ourselves a break and give ourselves grace. So for me personally, though, my situation is that, I'm enjoying my time with my family now because if you think about it, I have 2 kids in college and Will's in high school. So I wouldn't be able to see Jenna and Terry during this time, and now they're home. And so, like, to me, this is a little bit of a gift where it doesn't mean we don't have our challenges and things in the house because there's 7 of us because Diane's parents live with us as well. But it's just awesome. Like, we get to do meals together. We get to do games together. We get to do different things, right? And even if it's for snippets of time, it's just it's something that both me and Diane really cherish, these times together. And so I know that's not a lot of your situations, but I just want to kind of let you know that's where we're at. And I know many of you right now, parenting is maybe your greatest challenge. You know, like there was a woman from our church, her name is Liz, and she's a foster mom. And, you know, I do these daily devotionals, and she's on there. And so I asked her if I could share about this. And so she just, I love and appreciate her vulnerability. And so on the devotional, she'll just share like some of the things that she's going through. And my heart just goes out to her. But at the same time, it's like, how can we strengthen each other? How can we encourage one another? And she feels built up through our sense of community that we do in our devotionals. And so, you know, wherever you're at on this parenting spectrum, just lean in. You know, God is going to encourage you and help you through this, and he'll navigate this with you. But some of you are single moms, and that has its own challenges. And some of you are moms and dads on the front lines, and you're having to navigate how to homeschool the kids and still manage the house, and you have nothing left in the tank. You know, like that was something that was very obvious to me yesterday talking to different folks. Some of you moms and dads, and you're working from home and you're homeschooling, but some of you like are working right next to you. I've heard this several times where they're working in an office, like in the same office, side by side all day long, and the space seems to be getting closer and closer and closer. It's like caving in on us, right? And yet the kids' needs never stop. Right. And so it's 24/7. You're working, and all of a sudden like, your kids need this and that. Right. So it's going to be challenging, right, for us to navigate these times. But our goal at Stone Coast is to come alongside you, encourage you, and support you in this in-between time. All right. So I'm going to introduce my friend Kara. So we'll bring Kara up. And Kara is a great colleague of mine and a very close friend, and we've been probably working together, I don't know, I always guess, but I always say like 10 years. It could be 15, I have no idea. I always say 10. And but she's a dear, dear friend of mine as well, and I'm so excited about bringing her in. She's as beautiful as a person. She is a mom, and just wanted to get her perspective on some of these things. So just right off the bat, like some of the things I was talking about, the different paradoxes and the different tensions, what have you seen, or what are some of your takes on that?
Yeah, I think I would echo a lot of what you said. I think, you know, we're feeling it from parents across the board, and some of the feedback that you know, you just hear from friends and family members. And I think the other side of it is what kids are feeling right now. And sometimes we diminish that as well. You know, if you have young children, they may not have the language to really express what they're going through, and they know something has changed, but don't understand, and you know, don't have the capacity to understand that. If you have school-age children, they're, you know, they want to be with their friends. They're being forced into a situation with someone who doesn't know how to teach the new math. I mean, can someone give me an amen out there?
What is right? That math?
You don't want to know. We can't go into that right now. But every mother or father, you know.
I used to tell my kids, I'd be like, honey, as long as you get the answer right, it's fine. Just do it this way. I'm like, my way still worked, you know.
It's not working anymore. If you have high school kids, you know, they're being thrust into this and have to make a decision between whether they can, you know, take credit or not credit, or and their social circles at this age are huge. The social politics that come along with that, and trying to navigate that from afar really adds to their stress. If you have college kids that are now, you know, in your household and trying to figure out their rhythm and staying up till midnight or later and sleeping till noon, and everyone's trying to navigate that, right? And their college experience is not what the brochure had promised. And so I think, you know, kids in the house right now are feeling it as well and trying to figure all that out. Life as a parent has changed. And I think the tension increases when we try to parent in the same way, with the same rhythms and expectations, as if it hasn't. And this land between, this, you know, time between normal and whatever our new normal will be, certainly has been challenging. If you're not a parent, I just want to speak into you. If you've hung into the message this long, thank you. We also have some words for you today and how you can be part of raising this next generation. So hang tight with us. I think you'll find this as a blessing as well.
Yeah, give us some feedback and let us know. It looks like we froze up, so make sure, go back onto, if you're on Sean's Facebook page, make sure we got that. Make sure it's on all, because if it got off of it, we need to get back. You know what I mean? Like if it gets off of that and comes back on, we need to go back and redo it.
It's still live.
It's still live?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just it's slow.
Okay. So, yeah, I think, Kara, that was a great point as far as, I don't often, when I think about parenting, I don't think about it from the kid's perspective. And I see my son Will's face on here, so it's pretty cool. Hi, Will. You're coming up in a minute here, son. Get ready. So it's pretty neat to have that perspective and to think about it. Like we were we're going through this with Jenna right now. Like just, she's what, 22 years old. I always think she's 21. And she's an adult, and yet she's living at home. And so just kind of navigating that has been fun. It's interesting, but it definitely, it changes, and I'm sure from her perspective too, like what does it look like from her end? So thank you for sharing that. So what I want to do is give a little context to this idea of being in the land in between. When I first did the first week's teaching, we gleaned from Deuteronomy 6. And I want to just give you a little bit of backdrop, and then we're going to bring my son Will in to do the morning's reading this morning. But the land in between is when Moses was leading the Israelites out from slavery in Egypt, right? And they were enslaved, they were being beaten, they were working 16-hour days. I mean, it was awful. But God had come in and given them this promise, and that he was going to make Israel into this great nation that would bring salvation to the world. And they were going to lead them out of Egypt and into the promised land. But where we picked up is in the story is that they're right smack in the middle, and they're in the desert. They're in the land in between, and God meets them where they're at. And I feel like there's a lesson here that we can learn. So what we're going to do, Brian, we're going to bring in Will, and Will's going to join us live. You want to just bring him up, and I'll talk to him. Will, how are you this morning? Can you see us? You doing good, buddy? You got to make sure your audio's on. Hold on one second. Now go ahead and talk, Will. Test it out.
Am I good? You hear me?
You can talk?
That's 1, 2, 3.
All right. So why don't you go ahead and read to us from Deuteronomy 6, 1 through 12. All right, bud?
All right. These are the commands, decrees, and laws the Lord your God directed me to teach you. Observe so that your children and their children after them may fear the Lord your God as long as you live, by keeping all his decrees and commands that I give you, so that you may enjoy long life. Hear, Israel, and be careful to obey, so that you may go well with you, and that you may increase greatly in the land flowing with milk and honey, just as the Lord your God, the God of your ancestors promised you. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Lord, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength. These commandments that I gave you today are to be on your hearts. Talk them when you sit at home, and when you walk along the road. When you lie down, tie them as symbols on your hands, and bind them on your forehead. Write them on the door of your houses and on your gates. When the Lord your God gives the land he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give you a land with large, flourishing cities you did not build, houses filled with all kinds of good things you provide, wells you did not dig, and vineyards and olive groves you did not plant. Then when you eat and are satisfied, be careful that you do not forget the Lord, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. Yeah. Happy Mother's Day, everyone.
We can't see you right now, but I think you finished up. Thank you so much for doing that and being with us this morning. Did you wish everyone a happy Mother's Day? I missed it.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Thank you. Love you. See you in a little while. All right, Brian. Get rid of that youngster. That was also me, having fun, just trying to. I like using technology and trying different things. So, so far, so good. If you want, you can delete that one if it helps us at all. The Skype one. All right, so I want to talk about Deuteronomy 6:2, right? Just for a moment, and then Karen and I are going to go back and forth on this. It says, so that you, your children, and their children after them may fear the Lord your God as long as you live by keeping all his decrees and commands that I give you, and so that you may enjoy long life, right? So, good morning, Bella Maria. Good to see you. Good morning, April. Handsome young man, Erica says. Are you talking about me or Will? All right, so it says this idea of children and children and children, right? I want us to really get this, the importance of intergenerational influence. I really feel like this is something that's really missing in our society. And we need this more than ever. Like one of the blessings in our house is that we actually have Diane's parents living with us. And it's cool that, my mom and her husband and my dad and his wife, we all I like having the different generations, being able to encourage my children and give them different perspectives, right? And I feel like as a community at large and as churches around the world, we need to really lean into the gifts of all generations, and how do we get everyone to kind of have more respect and more leaning into what all generations have to offer. It's a real beautiful thing, and I think it's a void, so it's a place where we can all kind of lean in. That stood out to me about that verse. And then the other thing was this idea of just that they may fear the Lord your God as long as you live. And I want to just say that because sometimes when we hear that, we think of being afraid of versus this idea of reverence of. So the fear of the Lord is this reverence for God. For me, there's no better way to live this life except for God. And so there's this desire, right? I have an internal desire to live out his ways. No one has to force me to do this. I don't do it because I'm supposed to. I do it because in my fear of the Lord and how amazing and majestic and huge I believe he is, and that somehow he made a way for me to have a relationship with him that's humbling and most beautiful thing I've ever seen or heard or experienced, that I can't help but want to lean into that, right? And so maybe if you can hear these commands and these decrees with that kind of heart, you might be able to lean into it a little bit more. And then the last part that I love out of that verse is so that they may enjoy long life. Or in other parts, it talks about a prosperous life or an abundant life. And I would add to that an eternal life. The scriptures are filled with how to experience life to the fullest. And so this idea of integrating scripture into our being, right? Taking it in so that we can live it out is the best way to live life, in my humble opinion. And so I want you to recognize that what we're teaching, even though it's in the Old Testament, the whole Bible is this beautiful narrative, and it's a love story. And it's about it's a redemptive love story about putting the whole world back to rights, and it's also about loving others. And it's described as life to the fullest. This is what it means to live this life while we are here on earth. To live life to the fullest is to combine all of that. And we get to pass this on to generation to generation to generation. And that in itself is just a beautiful thought. When you think about that, we can take this message and give it away into the next generation so that the world will continue to know Christ. And then in verse 12, it says, "Be careful that you do not forget the Lord who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery." I was that verse really stands out to me. It's what a message for us today. You know what I mean? Because here we are, we're going through this period of time, and I'm I don't want us to forget the lessons that we're learning. And I want to ask you a question. So if you can start making comments on the screen, what are the life lessons that you want to hold on to, right? Because we're going to get out of this, and we're going to, quote unquote, go back to normal. And I don't want us to go back to normal. I want us to learn that there's something that we learn something about God in this. We learn something about our character in this. We learn something about our spouses. We learn something about our families and our parenting. We learn how to care for each other better. There's something that God is doing in us and through us that we can hold on to, but it's going to take intentionality on the backside of this. Because when we get back into the different rhythms that we're not in right now, it's I want us to hold on to. So what are the life lessons that you want to hold on to. So if you can just start throwing those in there, like what are the things that you're like, you know what? This is what I'm learning, and this is a value that I want to keep going. Like I've talked to a friend of mine, she's like, I realize like I work, and I need to learn how to slow down and take a break and really cherish life. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm trying to get a feel for. So what are those life lessons? And I'm going to continue on, but as we get those, I'll maybe make a few comments about those. Kara, anything? I'm going on, and you have anything that you want to add to that?
Just that, going back to, I think that Moses was, God was warning Moses, and he was passing that on to the Israelites, knowing that they would be distracted, by all the milk and honey in front of them. And think about the, countless distractions that we have as families right now. And, to really take this to heart, that it's easy for us to lose sight of God and faith in all of that. And we tend to put it in this little box and check it off for Sunday, an hour on Sunday morning. And Moses goes on to really instruct the Israelites on how to integrate that, and we'll get into that, into their daily routine. But really recognizing, you're going to be distracted. Please don't forget what God brought you from. So
yeah, cool. So I see on the screen it says having homemade dinner. So with your family, right, during the week. That's awesome. Erica was saying that. And right, isn't that just a beautiful thing that maybe some of us have lost that. Some of you do it, right, and that's fine. But like this is what I'm saying. Each person's very unique and individual. What matters to you? Thank you. So April writes, pauses in life are needed. Life shouldn't always be on super speed levels 24/7, right? So if there's a way to create a new rhythm out of this, beautiful. Debbie writes to slow down, right? This idea of pausing and slowing down. Brian says, time and adventures with my family is more important than the stuff I'm going through, right? Wow, this is a shift, right? There's a perspective shift. And these perspectives, I'm a huge, I love teaching on perspective. You'll hear me talk a lot about that because I think perspective is actually what leads to transformation. So thank you for that. Let's see. Lori writes, what we do with our talents is our gift to the world. From whom much is given, much is expected. See a need, meet a need. Yeah, I love it, right? So this idea, there's a responsibility as a church, right? As a community, as a people in humanity, that we get to make a difference when we do that. You guys are awesome. I love it. I love your feedback. Chanel writes, making time each day for family is so important to connect with everyone without screens and phones, right? My gosh, think about if you can take that into the next phase of life, this next phase of the journey, right? This idea that we get so consumed with screens and all that. Just as you know, Brian, if you just click on it, it will go off in 15 seconds on its own. Instead of dragging it, if you just click on it. Yeah. Emily writes, learning to live and love a different way, not taking things for granted. Wow. All right. Learning to live and love a different way. Not taking things for granted. Now, my goodness, if we could all take that, right? Take that into this our idea of who we are as human beings, that would be amazing. Not to take anything for granted. So on and on it goes. Thank you so. Oh my gosh, I can't. I'm not good when I can see the screen this week. This is new. So Bella Maria wrote, it brought me closer to God by bringing you into my life with a new pastor. Also helped me sing about God through my music. Oh, amen. Thank you for that encouragement. Mark says, we are learning how to take care of each other differently, figuring out what is important, what really matters. Good. Thank you. More and more. This is great, but we'll run out of time, right? Yes. Kara's like, keep going, Sean. All right. We got lots to talk about. Thank you so much. That's awesome. So let me say this. Here's something for all of us I believe to be true. So regardless of where we're at in this ocean and we're in different boats, I believe in parenting, things are better caught than taught. Okay? And what I mean by that is this is true when actions speak louder than our words. And so an example would be if you want your kids to be a great spouse, then have a great marriage. Easier said than done, I get that. But the more they catch you doing the little things. They catch you loving on your spouse. They catch you being kind to your spouse. They catch you communicating with your spouse. You're demonstrating what it means to have a great marriage. You're passing that on to them, right? And I would suggest that gives them a better chance of acquiring that and then passing that on to their kids, right? And this is how this generational thing, like one of the things that I'm passionate about is breaking. My parents got divorced. So when I got married, one of my prayers is for God to save us in such a way, to save me on a regular basis so that our marriage keeps getting stronger and better and more vibrant so that I can pass that on to my children. And then I got 3 kids that I hope and pray that they would take it and they would get married and they'd have great marriages and then they would pass it on, right? Like I take that very, very seriously. This is something that I really want us to see, like, out of this scripture, that there is this importance of the next generation to the next generation. And so we get to do that. And so recognize how our actions really, really make a difference. Okay, so let's get back to the story. Moses gives the Israelites very specific instructions and values on how to raise the next generation in faith, as he knew there would be like all these different challenges and temptations and things that would pull them off. And he knew that if they were to become the nation God intended, then they were going to have to pass this on from generation to generation. So again, picking up in verse 6 and 7, it says, "These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up." So I want you to think about impress them on your children. And I looked up the word impress. It's called shonah. Shonah, I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. Shonah. And it means to teach or to impress or even to engrave. Like I love the word picture of that. That imagery is very, very powerful. And so I want to ask you another question. What are the things that you want to impress upon? What are the things you want to engrave into your children, into their hearts, right? Not make them robots, but that these are the values. These are the principles of God. Like these are the things that you would love to see engraved in your children's hearts. So go ahead and write some of those things in. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the ones that for us, some of this, I'll call them the Smith family values. Brian, I'm going to need you to put up our signs here for a second. Our 5 values, I'll say them quickly, is do your best, respect, lead by example, the value of family, and then honesty and integrity. So think about this, do your best. I put a little image in there for do your best, so I don't know if you can make that come up on the screen or not. But now that always do your best is in our basement. Like Diane took a picture of that this morning, and that's we had that made because this is something we talk about all the time. Now, we can't always be the best, which is something like that would have been my thing. I would have said, kids, you're going to be the best. And Diane kind of had to come around me, Sean, calm down. I know you're competitive, but calm down. So this idea of, and we really talked about this, always do your best. And what that made me think of in Colossians, it talks about whatever you do it unto the Lord. And so this wasn't just like a value that we came up with because it sounded good. It was like, no, it reflects what I believe like is something truly important from scriptures, because I want for me and my wife, and I want us to lead by example in this, to pass on to the kids that whatever you do, because I don't care what you do, but I care how you do it and how you go about it, and you do it unto the Lord, right? You don't do it for all these external accolades and all these different things. What we do and who we are, we're here to follow Christ. And so how we carry ourselves matter. How we live matters. What we do matters. So do your best. All right. And it leads me into the next one. The other sign we have is to lead by example. All right. And so these are things that my kids hear ad nauseum. I also coach in the community, and I'll say these 2 things these are part of my 5 values when I coach. To lead by example. And the scriptures talk about treating other people like you want to be treated. So what I look at this is like when you lead by example, you're always taking responsibility. You're always seeing yourselves as a model, if you will, right? Like you want other people to follow your example. And so that causes me to want to live a certain way. And the Apostle Paul said, imitate me. Like, I think that's a pretty bold statement, but I love it because there's something about that. It's like, I don't, if I can't say imitate me, then there's something like that's not congruent with what I believe. And I haven't gotten the scriptures integrated me. And that doesn't mean I'm perfect, but it means that these values are anchored, they're rooted, they're part of me, that there should be some sort of fruit that comes out of following Christ. And so I would want people to follow me. You know what I mean? Like I want my kids to learn how to do this. All right. And so I could go on and on about that, but those are some of the top values. And I'll say this. As parents, if you have young children right now, ask yourselves this question early. Like, what are your top 4 or 5 family values? Because we actually disciplined differently. Like, I'll give you another, like cleanliness to us, like, you know, this idea of roles and responsibilities around the house, that's an important value, but it's not our top 5. So if their room wasn't perfectly clean, of course we'd have them like clean it up, you know, but it wasn't like going to be harped on. Now, if they disrespected their mother, because the value of respect is one of our top values, that's going to be disciplined a lot more. And it's going to be done consistently. And so I really wanted them to see like these values are what we think can help them develop into great Christ followers as they enter adulthood. Anything about that, Kara?
No, that was fantastic. Great job. I think
So-
I do want to just say that I think all of this, it really comes down to intentionality,
Yeah.
right? And so you may not have a perfect family plan in front of you, and you sit down with your spouse, and you come up with this great plan, and that's okay. But it's really about being intentional about what matters. And we'll get into this a little bit more, but I think that what you spend time on becomes your value. And so what does that look like in your household? And then keeping that in perspective with where we are in this season. So a lot of these nuggets today that we'll be talking about are broad parenting, practices or key elements, if you will. But have the freedom to tweak that in this season and not necessarily lower those expectations, but shift them. So keep all of that in mind throughout this message.
That's awesome. Thank you. And I see some comments coming in, so thank you, Stacy. It was so good seeing you yesterday. And I can't stop with it. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Appreciate you. I was thinking about you this morning and praying for you. So love you, and just know you're not alone, and you're in our prayers and our thoughts. And thank you for being with us this morning. And you write in your values: kindness, love for others, taking care of others in need. I guess I could have said those were going to be your your values. You're leading by example very, very well. Thank you. And then April writes, treat others with dignity and respect. Amen. That's something we talk a lot about at church. You know, this idea of like all people are worthy. All people matter. And if we can raise children, right, that get that, how different would our world be? Gail wrote that their character matters, right? Like how we carry ourselves matters. Yeah, so thank you. And others, if you want to just write in, please keep those coming, because you know what this does? Like maybe you've never even thought about family values and you're just kind of parenting, right? Like, and that's fine. I get that. Like a lot of parenting is like you make it up as you go. Our poor first children. You know, we learned on you. But you know, like this is why we do this. It's like hopefully you can grab something. I'm telling you, if you could have your 5 values or 4 values as a family, it will help your parenting. It will help your family. It just makes a huge difference. So so one of the points that Kara is going to be talking about is this idea of widening the circle. And so when I think about this verse about impressing upon our children, so we as parents do our best, but we're not in this alone, right? It says that it takes a village to raise a child. And so Kara came up with this idea of like widening the circle. What does that mean? What does that look like? So maybe, Kara, you could kind of just chat a little bit about what is widening the circle. And you're going to say you didn't do it.
Yes,
I know.
I did
You
not come up
stole
with
it.
this idea,
You stole it, so it's all right.
I need to make sure that is said. But in my previous position, I was a family and youth ministry leader and read lots of resources, some helpful, not so, some not so helpful. One of the best resources that I read was a book called Parenting Beyond Your Capacity by Reggie Joyner and Carrie Nieuwhof. If I can recommend any parenting resource, this would be it. So I don't even get any funds for recommending them, but this is coming from this book. So there are 5 key elements that they pull out. We're going to talk about 3 in particular today. But one of them being widen the circle around your children. If you were not aware of your capacity as a parent prior to COVID-19, you're probably feeling it now. What are we, 6 or 8 weeks or whatever into this season, and it's probably become pretty evident that you as a parent have a capacity. So the idea is to widen that circle around your children and intentionally invite others into the process of, in the case in Deuteronomy, to help instill faith in your children. We're extending that into instilling those values in your children. And so Moses was speaking to all of Israel. He wasn't just talking to the parents, that this was your job as a parent, but rather speaking to all of Israel, that it is our job to raise up the next generation and to, continue the legacy of faith. And so it's vital because you're limited, and you're feeling it right now. We talked about, the new math, right? Like you're feeling those limits right now. We naturally do this, I think, in our everyday life. We have coaches that we surround our kids with. We bring them to a dance teacher. We have music teachers in their lives, and so on. And so we're feeling all of that right now. It's not in place. And then I also want to say, if you're not a parent, you have a role in this. You may have a niece or a nephew, children of your friends. What a gift and opportunity it is for you to speak into their lives. I have a niece who's going through a particular difficult time right now, and my brother and I have, sort of really been intentional about how I can be a presence in her life and speak into her. So we came up with an idea to borrow from a friend of ours, Delita Tomalini, a family scavenger hunt, quarantine style.
Nice.
And so we did it with all of my brothers and their families and my parents this week, and it was a ball. It's really about getting creative and intentional about the things that you're doing. And I'll just give you an example of, yes, I can't go without sharing this, but do you want to hold it?
Sure, I'd love to hold this.
So this is the prize. It's, it's kind of, do you have that? There we go. It's a toilet paper trophy. And so this went to the winning family who found the most items in the house, and my brother Mark and his family won. If you don't have any toilet paper at your house, it's because they have stolen it all and or paid for it, but they definitely are hoarding the toilet paper. So, but to really get creative in this season, it's going to look different in how you invite those people into your family. So you may ask, a friend of yours to read a bedtime story to your little ones. Or if you're that person that might have that gift, give your friends a call and see if you might offer that to give parents just a break in the midst of that.
Delita thinks this is an awesome prize, and she says, ha, ha, ha.
Right, Delita? Thank you.
And you know what I want to say is, like, I hope every one of them got a trophy just like this, because that's the society we live in. Oh, Digger, sorry.
No, there's
everyone
only
got
one
a
to go
trophy.
Around. Only one to go around.
Y'all winners.
And then my last thought about widening the circle and just the value of grandparents. You talked earlier of the value of your children's grandparents in their lives, and they're also feeling it. Grandparents can't see their grandchildren, and they can't support their own, their grandchildren and through babysitting or what have you. And then the flip side of that is, if you're a grandparent or someone who has know someone that is raising young children right now, this is a time and an opportunity for encouragement. It's not a time to coach them and how they can be a better parent or what they're doing wrong, but really speak, words of encouragement into them and help to lift them up. Families are feeling this right now. They're feeling the weight of that, and now's the time for love and encouragement. That's what we need here.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of wisdom right there. So I appreciate, depending on where you're at and what your role is, right? And take that to heart. Like that's something that you can really reflect on and process. But I encourage you to do that. For us, like for me and Diane, like a couple of things that were important to us to widen our circle was both the church and through sports. I recognize school was just going to do that, built in, with the teachers and different things. But I wanted to kind of just talk very quickly about the value of church and then sports in our lives. But for me, the church for us wasn't, and it wasn't because I was a pastor. This was when I first became a Christian. I was still in a career, and so when Diane and I started to think about this is something that we wanted to instill in our children. And so every Sunday, it was just, this is the routine, this is the rhythm that we were in. And we were very fortunate. We went to Community Covenant Church for many years. It was where our children were raised, and we had a fantastic kids church at Community Covenant. And this was such a huge blessing to my family. And so like, I really want to encourage you, if this is a time of pandemic where it's like you've made a time where you've carved out a quote unquote a Sabbath time, whether it's now like during this 10 o'clock window, or we're going to show this again at 8 o'clock and we have a Wednesday night service, like we're trying to give multiple opportunities. I'm going to probably add another one around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm just trying to figure out, how can I help everyone create a rhythm that allows us to have Sabbath, allows us to have a time when we're worshiping together? And so this idea of coming together as a family, our children, because it was just something we did, never questioned it. You know what I mean? Like never pushed back because it was like since they were 0, right? When they were 6 months old, whatever, they started coming to church. This is just what we knew. This was our pattern. And I find like when we break the pattern, it's like anything else in parenting. Like when we're inconsistent, it makes it harder to reestablish something. And so I'm just a big proponent is like the value of going to church to get together. It's not the check off the box. It's to instill values. It's to help them have a peer group around the children. It's to have different adults to be able to speak into their lives, right? These biblical values. And so there's much more to it than quote, check the box. I went to church. No, this is passing on a spiritual heritage, and it really matters. You want to speak into that?
Sure. I think and I'd like to dialogue about this, but I think there are a lot of families right now that are starting to ask these questions. They may have children who are toddlers or school-age children that haven't been raising their family in faith right now until now, and are starting to ask those questions, and how to navigate that, and how to now make this part of their family rhythm, and where do they even begin with those faith conversations. I think when we're in a season like this, we start to question a lot of those things. So I will say, as a church, we would love to come around you with that. We have a fantastic kid church leader, Jessica Hershey, and she can certainly, speak into that. But I wonder if you wouldn't mind speaking into families who have older children maybe and are just starting to think about what faith looks like in their rhythm and how to sort of jump into that.
Are you asking specifically for the older kids? Or just generally? Yeah. Okay, so to me, I feel like we are in a season, right? And first of all, like for us at Stone Coast, we try very diligently to be a kind of church where we want all people to lean in. You know what I mean? Like we call it "come as you are." And so we welcome people. Like it doesn't matter what faith tradition you have. You could be atheist, you could be agnostic, you could whatever. It doesn't matter. what matters to us is like, do you want to engage in a journey that where we can come together as a community that's focused on making a difference in the world, right? And I do think this is something we want to pass on to all of our children. When I was in school years and years ago, I don't know if it was getting I think it was when I was getting my master's, or I don't know. Anyways, long time ago, one of the projects that we had to do is we had to interview people and ask them what was important for them for their children. And almost to a T, everyone said, I want to leave this world a better place for my children. So like we were living our lives in such a way to pass on to our children so that they would have a better future. And so when I heard that, I was like, this is interesting. Now from a biblical worldview, like, what is it, like, what did Jesus teach? And I always talk about, like, he was leading a revolution, right? Like he was on mission to bring forth a new way, a new kingdom. And so, like, to me, this is exciting to be able to pass on to our children that they have a role to play. And so if you're leaning in, like wherever you're at in the spiritual spectrum, I would encourage you, like, just again, like, talk to the different folks. We love to start a conversation with you. I'm always available. I'm doing these devotionals Monday through Thursday morning at 9:30, every Wednesday night at 7, and then Sundays at 10 and 8. So a phone call away, an email away. Like Kara said, herself, Jessica, like there's people at our church that can come around and answer questions, share our experiences. There's no cookie cutter way, but I do know that the value of passing on how do we grow spiritually is something that I think we overlook in our society. We're just like, oh, well, we'll let them figure it out. And I'm not saying, so think about this, like, because I think this is somewhat of a cop-out, where you think like we want to mold our children in all these other ways, but when it comes to spirituality, because of your own past, you don't want to coach them and lead them because you feel like you're going to be like, I don't know if brainwashing is the wrong word, but like somehow you want to leave it completely open for them to figure out. I would suggest, do your due diligence, ask the tough questions as parents to find out if this is something you can buy into, right? Like, so for me, Christianity is something I buy into. It's something that I believe fully. And so you want to be able to pass on something that you believe in. Now, as my kids have now become adults, I fully expect them to ask the difficult questions, to push back on it, to think about philosophy, think about world religions, think about all these different things, because I believe that the Bible holds up to it. I believe that Christianity holds up to it. I'm not worried about it. And they're on their own journey. So yes, we at the Smiths home, we have a Christian worldview that we have instilled in our children. We have biblical values that we're passing on to them, that we've impressed upon them. But they're unique and they're their own people. So they'll figure this out. And so I would encourage people to actually lean in more into it, and don't be laxed in this area, but to lean into it.
I think that brings us to our next point.
Oh.
Because I'm watching the time.
All right, go ahead.
I think it helps us to think, to your point earlier, of like imagining what they look like as an adult. And one of the premises in this book is to imagine the end. And what do we want our young adult to look like? We're not raising just good kids. We're raising godly, contributing adults. And when you can picture that and know that you're imagining what they will look like when you hand them over into the world, what is most important at that point? And I think that is really helpful to us in this season, because when you can think about them at the end, it gives us perspective on how much this season is going to impact them. Is it the chemistry lesson that they're going to remember during the season? Is it the long vowel lesson that they're going to remember, or how poorly mom taught, the new math? I don't think so. I think that what they're going to remember through this season is the atmosphere that we created in the midst of crisis. And to do that, we've got to shift our expectations of what we expect of them and of ourselves. And it's not about lowering the expectations, it's shifting them to match up with reality. And so if you can give yourself that freedom to do that, I feel like, it will certainly lessen that stress and give us the opportunity to look at learning differently. I know teaching our kids at home right now, my kids are 19 and 16, so I'm not feeling that as much, but I'm a teacher by trade. I can imagine that. So, lots of my friends are in this season. And, if we can impress on them what learning, a mindset of learning versus, learning only happen behind a desk, it will really help us to shift that thinking. So make a cake together, build a shed together, plant a garden, bring in those life learning lessons. Right now in this season, I think that is what is important. And I get there's a balance to that. I get there's, there are expectations of the school and things you need to get in. But I also know that for children with special needs or, unique learners, this is a hard season. You are going to see regression. It's okay. It is okay. Your children need to be loved during this season, and continue to keep that circle around them of those resources that they have. And it is going to take time to get back up to baseline, but it's okay. And give yourself the shift in expectations to get there, and sort of embrace where you are instead of trying to make it look as normal as possible.
Yeah, and I was thinking, like, when you think about imagining the end, we talk about starting with the end. We always talk about that with the end in mind. And there's a couple areas that I wasn't sure if I was going to share this or not, but there's something that I feel like there's two areas that Diane and I usually say I haven't done a good job at instilling in them, because I do look at, when I think about the end, keeping the end in mind, it's finances, and it's also this idea of standing up and taking risks. And so the finances is something I still feel like they're probably at an age right now where I look forward to, like, coaching them and talking to them about it. So I'm not like, oh, I blew it, but there were certain practices and habits that I would have instilled differently, with allowances and stuff like that, just to talk about savings and giving and things like that. But this other one is a reflection of a brokenness in me as a human being, that this idea of standing up and taking a risk, there's something broken in me where it's like I'm concerned about, quote unquote, looking good or getting things right, and I'm afraid to offend anybody, and a lot of it plays into, like, I feel like I wrestled with abandonment issues as a kid and stuff like that. So I'm afraid to, like, ruffle people's feathers, and in doing that, I haven't been doing a good job of passing on to my kids, like, stand up for what's right. You know what I mean? Like, regardless of, you're gonna have critics, you're gonna offend people. Not everyone's gonna like you, but you do what is right. If you believe that God called you to do it, and so I kind of want to transition into this last point about creating a rhythm. And I have a story that I want to share, but the verse is Deuteronomy 6:7, where it talks about impressing upon the children, but it talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. So it really captures this essence of life, right? Like, as you're going through life. And for me, when I think about creating a rhythm, it's like teaching life lessons. And I believe, like, one of the things that I want to share with everybody is, when you're parenting, can you connect what the scriptures say to the life lessons that are happening? So instead of, like, correcting and disciplining, right, just for doing that because you're trying to modify behavior, when you're truly trying to parent for, like, keeping the end in mind, so that they grow into, like, a sense of godliness, taking on his character, it's critical that we learn how to, like, in our coaching, if you will, that we bring in the connection to the scriptures. All right, so that they are connecting, like, that what mom and dad are teaching me, what they're correcting me for, what they're disciplining me for, that they connect it to the values that the Bible is upholding. And so we've done that a lot in our house, and I would put that out to you, to all of us to consider. So one of the things that a story of mine is I was thinking about my 3 kids and whatnot, and I was thinking about Will. So Will was our youngest son, and he's the one that shared earlier the Bible reading. But, like, I use sports a lot, like, as far as life lessons. I feel like in that there's a lot of opportunities. And I put the theme of gain your voice. Because he's a quiet kid by nature. And in many ways, that's biblical because the Bible talks about that. You know, like the person who speaks all the time is like, you know, you'll know they're a fool pretty quickly. So there's wisdom in not speaking all the time like I do. And so he takes on more of his mother's nature in that way. But under this umbrella of lead by example, so one of our core values as a family, I'm like, but I feel like it's my responsibility to pull out of him, like, Will, you need a voice. Because like my example from sports is like, and I do this because Jesus did this. Like Jesus spoke up, he stood up, he flipped over tables, he made his way known because what was important to him, right? And I want Will and all my kids to realize like, what is God calling you to, and have a voice in that. So sports isn't it, but it's a life lesson, it's a tool. And so in that, there was a time where like he plays football and he's a wide receiver, and Will is so like, he's such a team person, and he isn't going to say anything. So he'll run a route 100 times, right? Like just run. And he'll do it 100%. And let's say he's open 90 times. He will never come back to the huddle and go, hey, I'm open. You know, like, and I'm like, and I said it to him. I said, Will, you have to have a voice. Like, and this isn't so that you get the glory, you get a touchdown. It's all about you. No, it's what's going to help the team win. You know, you're actually hurting the team by when you're open all the time. If you don't say anything, you're not helping the team. And so we just had this dialogue about going back and forth. And it's just my way of saying, like, Will, you got to assert yourself. There's something about having a voice in life because you're going to need that later on. And if Christ is going to use you to face resistance, to face critics, like whatever your life path will take, I know this is a life lesson that he needs to take on. Does that make sense? So I use my life lessons for creating a rhythm is mostly through sports. What about you?
I really like how Moses breaks that down for us, and really to say that this is to be done throughout our daily routine. But the interesting thing is that throughout those times in our day, we play a different role with our children. So during meal times, we're more of a teacher. It's a little more formal discussion to establish values. During drive times, you know, out on the road, as he says, we're more of a friend. It's a little less formal. It helps to interpret life. It's best time to have conversation with teenagers because they're not making eye contact. That's a little advice to you. If you're at bedtime, you're playing more of the role of counselor. There's a lot of intimate conversation. And if you're, you know, in the morning, you're more of a coach and really encouraging words to instill purpose in them. But what you make time for in your rhythm sets your values. I'm going to say that again because it's really important. What you make time for in your rhythm sets your values. So children strive on routine, and right now their routines are all over the place, right? Flexibility is your friend. We may be sort of coming out of this season, but things are going to look different for us for, you know, months to come. Our play dates might not be as full, and parks may be, you know, closed. So you still will need to create a new rhythm in where we're at. It may look different for us. Mealtime has always been high value for us, and we have dinner pretty much together every night prior to COVID-19. And so it's just something that we have sort of, you know, instilled as part of our rhythm. Some days it's different, you know, sports and all of those pieces. But during this season, our mealtime has shifted. So I have, as I said, a 19 and 16-year-old, and right now, or this winter, we started having dinner together in our living room in front of the fire and playing cards. And now that's certainly not, you know, a formal place for discussion. It's a place of engagement, and so it looks different in different seasons in your life, and that's okay. Embrace that, and you know, call it a win. If you're having meals with your 19-year-old every night, it's a win. Win's a win. So flexibility is going to be your friend in creating this, you know, a new rhythm in this season. So.
Yeah, perfect. And we'll just close, just for time's sake. Crystal, want to bring in Crystal's comment, Brian? Crystal writes, I think that it's an incredible point. We aren't lowering standards, expectations. We are shifting them. And what does that shift look like for our family or your family? That's a point I've been exploring for the past week or so. What will the shift look like, and how can we show our kids that even if life looks a little different, lazy in some ways compared to before, it's about growth, not a comparison of before or intended to look good or bad. You know, it's just, Crystal, I really appreciate that thought, right? And I think it's important for all of us that we're going to have to navigate this new world, really. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to create this shift. And that's why I call it a perspective shift as well. Perspective will always lead to transformation, and that's where the actions will come out of that. And so I really thank you and thank you for sharing, first of all, and also for doing the work, right? For you to be processing this and reflecting on this, because it is something that you can then pass on to your children, right? And then, like we talked about, and then the next generation, et cetera. So this value of parenting in between, one, give yourself a break, right? In the sense of, we're not going to get it all right. We all have different roles to play. Let's figure out the three things we talked about: is widening the circle of influence for our children, give ourselves the freedom to shift our expectations, and by let's imagining the end, and also to create a new rhythm. And so those are the three things that we want you to kind of wrestle with, grab onto. But we're really appreciative of you for tuning in. Wish you a happy Mother's Day. Kara, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, did a great job, and we'll be doing it again.
I look
Don't say
forward to
anything.
it.
Yeah, all right. Good. So let me just say a quick prayer, and then send you off and have a beautiful Mother's Day. Lord, we thank you so much for this teaching from the scriptures that Moses kind of laid out for us, right, to help the folks to go into the promised land, to create a new hope and a new future. He gave them this beautiful vision of starting with this imagination of what it could look like, to bring forth hope into this world, to bring salvation to the whole world. Lord, we have an opportunity to pass on from generation to generation these family values that matter to us, that we want to instill into our children. So just help us to widen our circles, to get the right people around us, and to go forth and to start with the end in mind, as we create new rhythms during this pandemic. And we ask for your leadership in that. We ask that your Spirit help us in that. May you minister to the single moms and the moms on the front lines and all the families, Lord God, that just need that healing touch. They need to have a spark of light, this spark of energy. May you come and lift up these folks, Lord God. We love them so much. We're thankful for all they're doing. We thank you for family. And Lord, may you have your way. We appreciate you. We love you. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. God bless you. Happy Mother's Day. We'll see you next week.